it's me, Amanda, and today I'm going to talk about books that I read in November. I'm dressed much more Christmassy, but that's because I'm excited. I'm recording this on November 1st, so let's see. Who knows when it'll actually come out. Alright, first book I have to talk about is an audiobook. Finished it right at the beginning of the month. The Change by Kirsten Miller. Now, this book is described as like a revenge story, which it very much is. So this one is about three women. We've got Harriet, who used to be in advertising. She used to be a big shot in advertising, and she goes through some stuff and comes out a witch, you know, as one does. We've got Jo, who owns her own women's only gym, and she's discovering that she's extremely physically powerful as she goes through menopause. And then we have, I believe it's Tessa. God, it's amazing how much I don't remember names. But then we have Tessa, who's a really nice sweet lady, but she can see dead people and find dead bodies as a result. We've got these three ladies, and they join up and discover that there is some kind of serial killer preying on girls in where they live. So, all right. This book, just a heads up for anybody who's might be interested, super, very feminist. This is like punch you in your face feminist. I think it's just good to know that going in. I'm really feminist myself. It didn't bother me. I just think it's good to know that if you're going to go into it, because it is very like most men suck kind of a book. And I think there is something to be said for a little bit of subtlety here and there. Overall, I enjoyed it. It was a recommendation from a friend. But basically, it's very interesting, kind of like witchy, but modern, and you have this connection between these women and their lives, and how they work together to try to solve these crimes. There were other little things about this book that would kind of grate on me just a tiny bit. There's a lot of use of the word girls, but they're talking about more like teenage girls. And I feel this is a hard thing to explain. When it comes to using the term girls, if you're under 18, you're a girl, right? I agree. And, young women would imply over 18, maybe like up to 22-ish. I don't know. It's not an exact science. But the characters in the book would refer to the victims as girls and babies. Oh, she's just a baby. And you're talking about like a 17-year-old. A 17-year-old is still a girl. We're not trying to open the door for pedos, okay? I just think that there is a distinction between like a teenage girl who's close to being a young woman. It doesn't really matter. And truthfully, I feel like my being annoyed by it might be saying more about me as a person in my societal upbringing than anything else. It's really not actually bad. You know what I mean? It's not actually a bad thing. It was just something that would sometimes rub me the wrong way, for a lack of a better way of putting it. That said, it is actually true. So there you go. I gave this one, what did I give it? I gave it 3.75 stars because it wasn't quite a 4-star for me, but I did think it was a solid book. I enjoyed it throughout. Little weird things like that rub me the wrong way, and there's other little things, but I'm not going to go into a huge every single detail kind of a thing. If you're super feminist and you are pissed at men at the moment, this is a great book to read. Next book I read was, this is a big honker. Let's see if I can hold this up the whole time I talk about it. Yeah, we'll do this side here. No. This is Children of Fallen Gods by Carissa Broadbent. This is the one that comes after... Oh my god, I already can't remember the name of it. Daughter of Lost Worlds. Daughter of No Worlds. It's the trilogy is The War of Lost Hearts. Okay, this is the second book. I can't really tell you a ton about what's going on because you'd have to read the first book. It is huge. This thing is gigantic. I have to say, I should not have gotten this physically. I did because I really liked the covers. The first cover on the first book, I absolutely loved and adored because there's a lot of really good detail in the character. It's like, it's exactly as the character is described, and I really appreciated that. That said, reading a book that is this physically large is honestly annoying. You can't lay down and read it because you're going to clock yourself in the face. It takes a lot of muscle. Anyway, of all the things to be talking about, basically it's a continuation. I gave it 4 stars. I enjoyed it. It was a little long, but I managed to get through it. I don't have any strong feelings. I know a lot of people really like this one. I know one lady I like to watch on BookTube. This one's her favorite of the trilogy, but I just never really felt super invested. I had no problem finishing it, despite it being a long book, which says a lot, I think. But I never got, super into it. I don't know why. I think it's part of it is that there's, a mystery in it, and I figured it out very quickly. I don't think I'm that smart, okay? So I don't think I hate to say it, it wasn't much of a mystery. Still worth reading if you're into, and I should just clarify, this is I would call it romantasy, fantasy romance, romantic fantasy. There you go. Next I read my November book of the month, This Spells Love by Kate Robb. Was this one a debut? I think it might have been a debut. But this one's another romance. Alright, so this one, we've got our lead female, Gemma. I had to look up the name and her friend Dax. Okay, so Gemma has a bad breakup, and it was with a guy she'd been dating for 4 years or something, quite a while. It didn't work out. She's very upset about it. She decides she's going to do a spell to not remember the guy. So she doesn't remember anymore. It turns out that night that she met this guy, she also met her best friend, a guy named Dax. And she absolutely adores him, cares so much about him, doesn't see him in a romantic way. I don't know why, but there you go. Okay. She does the spell, and then after she does the spell, it changes everything. I originally heard this one as, oh, her best friend doesn't remember her. It's not just that he doesn't remember her. Her entire life is different. It's like an alternate reality dimension of if she never went to this party and met her ex, and she also didn't meet her best friend, this is what would have happened. Which I thought was a great take. I love stuff like this, okay? First of all, I'm a Groundhog Day lover, so any kind of repeating day stories, I'm always into those. This isn't a repeating day story, though. This is alternate reality. I eat this up. I love this stuff. So immediately I was like, oh, this is better than I thought. That's the basic plot. And then basically she's trying to get Dax to, she has to wait a month in order to have the moon align properly so that she can do the spell again and try to reverse and go back to her previous life. But there's a lot of positive changes for her in this reality, which I thought was interesting. I like the little nuanced takes that the author makes of what would be different, and especially the changes in Dax are very interesting, showing the influence Gemma had on him. Of course, it is a romance between Dax and Gemma because, they can see each other differently now that they weren't friends first, you know? Now, I really enjoyed this. I gave it 4.25 stars. And things I really enjoyed is you really feel things like there was a really good description of Gemma's feelings about when she realized like Dax wasn't, you know, he's not her friend, and she's trying really hard to get that connection between them back. But it's like, it's hard. You can't always you can't make that happen, you know? You can't force these things. And how incredibly sad she feels when she can tell that he just doesn't see her initially, or it's like, it's embarrassing and it's really sad, and I just felt so bad for her, and like I felt that emotion that was put through very, very well. That said, Gemma is a very self-centered person. This is one of her flaws. It is dealt with later in the book appropriately, like at least it's called out, thank goodness. Yeah. She's an overall nice person, but she's self-centered. She's just all her all the time. And I understand. She's going through, like, an intense thing right now, but, like, there are other people in your life still, honey. Anyway, like I said, it is dealt with in the book, so... Another random thing to mention is she is, like, totally obsessed with this guy's dick. Like, it's kind of weird, like, her obsession with his dick. Like, okay, I, as a woman... have never been like, wow, loved that dick so much. I don't know. Maybe other chicks are different. Whatever. It doesn't really matter. Overall, a solid romance novel if you think that concept sounds intriguing. Next, I read Godkiller by Hannah Kaner. I don't know if I'm saying her name right. It's a cute little one, isn't it? So, this book is a fantasy novel, high fantasy, right? So high fantasy novel. Now this one, it centers around 4 characters. We've got Kirsten. Kirsten is a god killer. Now in this world, there's lots of gods. And they have a certain kind of like system, magic-y system way that they work, where they have to have like a shrine, and they take like, people can give them coins or sacrifices. It gets intense with the gods, and that gives the gods power, basically. Most of them are assholes as a result. I mean, anyway, I'm not going to go too far into that because it's worth reading the book to get the nuance of that. But anyway, Kirsten is a god killer. She meets up with a girl named Inara. Inara is like 12 years old. She and this small god called Skedi Seth, he is a god of white lies, and they are attached to each other. Like, they can't get physically far from each other, and they're trying to figure out like what's going on here. How do they become separated so that they can both live their own lives? And they end up later on meeting another gentleman named Elogath. He is good friends with the king, and he has his own specific mission. I'm not going to talk about it. I mean, it's not much of a spoiler because it happens in the beginning. But these characters get intertwined together, and we get this great like group dynamic between them, which, oh, I love that stuff. I loved the whole system of how the gods worked. I thought it was really interesting, really entertaining. And I just really enjoyed this book. Like, it took me a lot longer to read than I would have expected. Maybe just because, like, if you've been reading a lot of, like, romance and stuff, you know. But I really enjoyed it. There is a good romance in this, like a side plot romance. Really loved it. This also takes place in a world where it's, like, homosexuality is very normalized. In fact, I'd say more of the other couples are, like, lesbian couples, which it's great. Like, I really dug it. Again, the character dynamic and interaction is what really got me in this book. And, like, I love distinct characters who have these fun interactions with each other. There's a lot of tension, and, oh, it's great. I gave this 5 stars. It doesn't have a very high Goodreads rating, and okay, but I thought it was great. Next, I tried to read Lady Isabella's Scandalous Marriage by Jennifer Ashley. I DNF'd this a little after a quarter of the way through. So this one, it's a series of brothers. They're like Scots. It's historical romance. And I read the first one, The Madness of Lord Ian Mackenzie, a long time ago. Like a long time ago. And it was fine. I didn't love that book, but it was fine. So I decided, I got this, I think, for free at like a book swap. And I was like, well, why not? I just didn't feel this book. It's basically an estranged couple. They're married, but, you know, it's the 1800s or whatever, so you can't just get divorced. So they're separated. They've been living separately, but the gentleman, Malcolm, he's still, like, so obsessed with his wife. Like, he wants her back, basically. That's, like, the plot. What I didn't like about this book is it felt like their connection was entirely based on lust. I just didn't feel any real, actual connection between the characters, which is why I read romance. I want connection. I don't want it to just be smut. Maybe if I were in a specific mood, I could see myself reading something that is entirely just smut or porn or whatever. But this is like, I just wasn't feeling any connection aside from, oh, they want each other still. And I'm just like, and, like, there's even a line where the husband says that he doesn't really know what Isabella's into or her interests. Now, I stopped reading it. I DNF'd it. So it could be that there is major character growth with him and he, like, gets to know her as a person and they have a true connection and they fix their marriage that way. That is entirely possible that that happens in this book. And if you've read that and that is the case, let me know and I'll give it another shot. But I mean, I'm a quarter of the way through, and it felt like I wasn't seeing any sort of actual connection aside from lust. So I just was like, not my thing. And I decided I just wouldn't bother finishing it. Next, I listened to an audiobook, Great Northern by Arthur Ransome. So it's another in the Swallows and Amazon series. The books that my husband loves. And Great Northern is actually the last book in the series. I still have one more book that I'm currently listening to because I skipped it. This one, so in this series, most of the books are based in reality. Of course they're fiction, but they're happening in the real world. There are two books that are definitely entirely fiction, which would be Peter Duck and Missy Lee. I'm listening to Missy Lee right now. These are entirely made up. I'm guessing by the character Titty in the books that she has made up these stories on her own. This is just good to know for background. Now, this book, Great Northern, is very on the line of, did this really happen or is it a story? It's kind of hard to tell. I think it is, in fact, fiction made up by the characters. And I base this on the fact that there's no mention of Bridget, which is the littlest sister of the Walker children, the Swallows. And they're sailing at sea and whatnot, and I just don't think that I don't really think that it happened. Just, it seems like it is fiction. Now, basic plot of this one is they're sailing around Scotland and they stop and go exploring, and Dick, one of the characters, finds a pair of nesting Great Northerns. This is a big deal because Great Northerns don't actually nest in Great Britain. They only nest abroad. So this is like a big deal that they're nesting there. People do see the birds, but nesting is a big deal. And Dick accidentally tells a bird egg collector dude, and then it's a scramble to try to save the birds and their nest. So Like I said, I think that this is fiction made up by the characters. I was talking to my husband about it, and I think my theory is that Dorothea made up this story. This is fine. I gave it 3.5 stars. It's not bad. It's entertaining enough, I suppose, but it's a little weird. Like, the way they portray the Scots is, you know, about as culturally sensitive as the books typically are, which is not at all. I mean, it was written in the 30s. Like, the expectations could only be so high. I was fairly entertained. There's some parts in the book where there's overlapping perspective with the characters. So the characters separate, and the author will write each like version of what the characters were doing, which is kind of cool. And that's something he does start to do in the later books, and it's fine. It's fine, but it does get a little, like, there are little parts where it's like, you really didn't need to write this. I didn't need to know this perspective. Like, at one point, at the very end, the characters are looking for something, and you're in one perspective, and the thing is found. But then he has another chapter of just the kids, from the perspective of the kid who found the thing. We don't need this. We know the thing was found. I don't need to know. It wasn't found in some special, amazing way. I don't need to know, like, any extra detail. It's just unnecessary and, quite frankly, very boring. Okay. So there's stuff like that in the book. So it's fine. If you're really into this series, go for it. There you go. And then next, I got a couple on my Kindle. First one is Funny Feelings by Tarah Dewitt. Now, this one is a contemporary romance novel. It takes place between the lady's named Farley and the gentleman's named Meyer. And since they are both comedians, it's pretty clear that they're named after Chris Farley and Seth Meyer, I'm assuming. Basically, they are friends. Meyer is Farley's manager, I guess you could say. Like, he helps her with her stand-up career, and they end up in a fake dating situation, and of course that brings out feelings, and there you go. Honestly, this was really solid, really good romance. If you're into romance, what's nice is this is more of like a friends to lovers vibe, which I love friends to lovers. It's why I liked This Spells Love as well. I feel like Friends to Lovers is a hard one to get right, but when you get it right, it's really, really good, in my opinion. I think this one didn't even have an actual third act breakup. There are some conflicts between the characters, mostly communication issues, but the characters get through it. They're rather mature about it. If you're someone who likes conflict, this might actually feel really underwhelming, but I personally loved it. I thought it was great. I gave this 4.5 stars. Highly recommend it if you like romance. And then the next book I read was The Right Move by Liz Tomforde. So this book is like, it had a lot of hype behind it. And I was super excited to read it. So this one takes place, it's another romance novel, contemporary. This one's a sports romance. Takes place between Indy, who, the first book in the series is Mile High. Indy is friends with that character, and then that character's brother is the love interest, Ryan Shea. Ryan Shea plays basketball. Indy is a flight attendant. And it ends up that Indy has nowhere to live. Her boyfriend cheated on her, and she ends up, Stevie, the main female character of the last book, is like, strong arms her brother into letting Indy stay at his house, his apartment. And they also end up in a fake dating situation, because fake dating is like the trope, apparently. So they end up in a fake dating situation in order to make Ryan look more approachable to the team manager? Whatever. They end up in a fake dating situation. And it's close proximity because they live together. So there you go. Now, this book was touted as like the romance of all romances, and it was really good. I gave it 4.5 stars. I feel a lot of guilt for not giving it 5 stars. Now, part of it is because I already knew some of the stuff that was going to happen in this book. So I recommend if you are interested in this book, try to just stick to the basic like stuff. Because Ryan Shea is a fantastic man. He is very thoughtful and does a lot of amazingly thoughtful things for indie, and I love that stuff. I love it. However, for some reason, I just never got that whole, like, for me, a 5-star book is a book that I can't put down and gives me the swoony butterfly feeling, and I just didn't get the swoony butterfly feeling in this one. And I don't know why, because there wasn't really any real reason for me not to. But this book deals with some tough topics, and it deals with them very well in a very mature way. It was a really, really solid romance. I highly recommend it. I think part of the reason I didn't get the swoonies is that Ryan Shea, while a fantastic man, is still a little more on the domineering side. And I like my men a little soft. I don't know. It's fine. It's not a bad, you know what I mean? Like, 99% of women are going to absolutely go gaga over this guy. He just wasn't quite my type. Okay, we're getting near the end of my books. Because I read like 9 books, which isn't amazing, but it's pretty good for me. Next I read Remarkably Bright Creatures by Shelby Van Pelt. This one is about an octopus. No, it's really about the lady who cleans the aquarium, and she and the octopus kind of develop a friendship. His name's Marcellus. There are little parts that are from his perspective, which I really loved. There wasn't enough from his perspective, though. But the lady who does the cleaning of the aquarium, Tova, she has a sad life. Her husband died of cancer about 5 years prior to when the book is occurring, and her son went missing a long time ago and was presumed dead right after he was like 18 years old. Very, very sad. So she lives alone, and it's a tough life for her. There are other characters that intertwine into this. Another character named Cameron. Cameron, his mom left him at a young age, and he's had a rough time of it. However, he also is extremely kind of like entitled and very lazy, for lack of a better word. He constantly is getting fired from his jobs and whatnot. He gets a hint about who he thinks his father might be, and he tries to go see him, and because he wants to hustle money out of the guy, basically. So there you go. And those are the 2 main perspectives, along with Marcellus, the best octopus ever. So this book was really good. I gave it 4.5 stars. It's the same thing with, like, I thought this would be a 5-star book for me, but I just didn't get that feeling about it, unfortunately. It's an emotional book. I actually thought, I can't believe I'm going to say this, I actually wanted it to be a little more emotional, oddly enough. Like, I know, that's so strange, but, like, sometimes with sad stuff, sometimes I actually want them to, like, just punch me in the heart, you know? Like, anyway, this was still a really great book. I loved the ending. It does have a really good ending, and I think unfortunately I figured out a piece of it way too early. So I think that might have affected kind of my feelings on it. But all in all, a solid book if you're looking for like more of a literary fiction. Lastly, I read, and I'm not sure how you pronounce it, Eidolon by Grace Draven. This is the second book in what's called the Wraith King series. And the first book was Radiance. Radiance is the friends to lovers. We've got the human lady with the guy who's a Kai. Kai being kind of like a dark elf orc mix-ish kind of a race. And it's like a fantasy romance. Now, Eidolon's the second book. I loved Radiance. I absolutely loved that book. So I was like, okay, I'm going to go for this one. And it was one of those situations where after I got this book, I was like, I don't know why why I got this. Like, Radiance, the way it ended was fine for me, and I liked the ending, and like, that could have been it, and I think that would have been a good place to just leave everything off. But I was kind of like, well, I really liked it, so I'll read the next book. And the whole time reading it, I'm just like, I don't want there to be more. I'm just like, I liked how the last one ended. I didn't want more, you know? So I really should have probably just stopped at the first one. That said, I still gave this book, like, what did I give it? I gave it 3.5 stars. It's not bad or anything. It adds more drama to the story that I personally didn't need. Now, that said, reading this book, there is a setup, and the third book is a different couple as the focus, which, okay, if this third book had been the second book, I think I would have been a lot more excited about it. But as it was, the way it's done, the second book is kind of like, it's a continuation, but like the first book is kind of overall low stakes, right? The second book is high stakes, so it's a lot more stressful all of a sudden. And like, yeah, there's this major conflict between the main couple, an outside conflict, which I like outside conflicts instead of conflicts between the characters themselves. I really like that. But it's like, the stress of it, right? Which I didn't really need in my life. So I'd only recommend reading this book if you want more conflict between the characters and you want something a little more high stakes. And also, if you like Sarovek and Anhusit, I don't know how you say these names, okay? If you like them, then I think it's worth reading this book because it's a setup for the third book, which is about those two characters. So now that I've read the second one, I actually do want to read the third one because it's about different characters. So I think about a different couple. So I think that'll work out better. But just, I know it's really weird to be like, I didn't want to read this book. If I'd had more foresight, I probably would have just been like, you know what, I'm not going to bother. I'm going to just end with the first one. But I didn't put enough thought into, like, you got to kind of check what the next book's going to be about. You know what I mean? If I had, I think I would have been more likely to enjoy it. So anyway, that is finally it. I read 9 books. It was a good reading month for me. I hope December will be great as well. I have so much to read right now. It's ridiculous. Let's see. If you watch the whole thing, drop me a Christmas tree because I am feeling Christmas right now. I am so excited to read some Christmas books and just get all up in the Christmas. Like, it's December now. Nobody can judge me. I mean, you can. But at this point, it's like Christmas is on. Like, there is no denying it is Christmas time. Okay. Hope you're all doing well. Bye.